Today we're making a soup that's called gazpacho. It's presumably Spanish soup, which is actually not a soup, not even a soup. It's a cold soup. It's more like a liquid salad. So the ingredients for this soup are very simple. So I'm going to do a huge batch of the soup because it's actually pretty labor intensive, even though I'm actually doing a few shortcuts, which I'm going to explain later. So we'll need approximately 40% of the soup by weight will be tomatoes, and another 40% by weight will be English cucumbers, okay? Maybe 15% will be bell peppers or sweet peppers. Then I'm also using quite a bunch of, I think it's called whatever, green onion. And I am also using, and I'm going to bring it quickly, approximately half of this red onion. Then quite a lot of balsamic vinegar, quite a lot of extra virgin olive oil, and I'm also using, to make it even more zesty or spicy, I'm using this Calabrese Italian sauce, but basically it's just red pepper flakes. You can use them. You don't have to use this. And of course, salt. So the instruments to make the soup are also very interesting. So I'm going to use a very, very huge pot because I don't want to waste a lot of time making the soup every day. So, and I'm going to use 2 strainers, one with bigger mesh and one with smaller mesh. And this whole setup will yield probably around 5 liters of soup, which will be enough for 5 days, maybe. Okay, let's see how we can make this wonderful soup in 30 minutes or less. Oh, and forgot one more thing. This soup also requires quite a bit of garlic. I would say like the whole head of garlic, maybe even more. So, garlic. So the first step is obviously get tomatoes washed and prepared. Tomatoes are a little bit tricky because they need to have a taste, right? So when you go to the store, the standard store tomatoes usually don't work. You need to buy something like premium, something that is ripe and that actually smells like a tomato, right? Because this soup is based on tomatoes, so tomato better be good. Tomatoes better be good. So I'm washing them and putting them in the next sink to dry, okay? Then doing the same with onions and cucumbers. Then basically doing the same with onions, washing them thoroughly. And cucumbers. Cucumbers need to be peeled. And the canonic recipe of gazpacho assumes that you also peel the tomatoes. So you're supposed to put tomatoes into boiling water and peel them. This is a very labor-intensive process, which I'm not doing. I'm shortcutting that step. That's why I need 2 strainers. Basically, tomato skin will need to be filtered out in the end of the process. So you will see how I'm doing it. It doesn't really matter in which sequence to cut all this stuff. I am so basically everything needs to end up in the pot. So cutting the onions. And it doesn't really matter how you cut them, to be honest, because everything will be shredded with a mixer in the end. So you basically cut them just so that they don't occupy too much space when you drop them into the pot. For all it's worth, you might just dump them in without cutting. But I cut them just a little bit, and then I put them into the pot. The next steps are cucumbers. They need to be peeled, otherwise it can provide bitter taste. So cutting off the ends, typically, because that's the part that is more likely to be bitter. And then slicing off the skin. This one's stuck. Okay. slicing off the skin. Yeah, so then we cut those cucumbers, which is not always easy. Again, the purpose of cutting, honestly, is so that just they fit better into the pot. A Gordon Ramsay version of the soup assumes that once everything is mixed, you leave it for a few hours to ferment. I find that absolutely unnecessary. They can ferment in their jars once I pulverized everything, for all I know. So yeah, cut the cucumbers and put them into the pot. You can be as flimsy as you want when you cut them. Everything will get pulverized anyway. As are concerned, again, almost doesn't matter how to cut them. In theory, everything will get filtered out anyway, so you might actually keep those parts, but I'm kind of cutting them out sometimes, maybe being a little bit old-fashioned here. I'm cutting the tomatoes and putting them into the same cup, into the same pan. Sorry. Again, don't bother with skin removal. It's all absolutely unnecessary. Skin will be filtered later. Bell peppers are next. We'll also cut them all. The only thing we remove is actually the middle part. Yeah, we need to shake this thing so that we can pack more vegetables into it. Alright, so with peppers it's very simple. Cut them like this. Remove the seeds. Remove the seeds and slice them up again pretty flimsily. Doesn't matter how big or how small you slice them. Yeah, something like this. Why did I choose the yellow and red? It doesn't really matter. You can go with the green peppers, you can go with red peppers. Any sweet bell peppers will do. Whatever is on sale. Well, then we need to put in quite liberal quantities of garlic. The problem is cleaning the garlic is no fun. Here's the trick if you want to clean your garlic quicker. Just put it in hot water for a few minutes. Not boiling, but just hot from the tap. Well, canonic Spanish recipe actually calls for removing the middle, the core, like core of the garlic, but I don't know, maybe they have different garlic in Spain. Removing anything from my garlic is almost impossible, so I'm just leaving it as is. So as you can see, approximately 1 head of garlic, and also I'm putting half an onion, red onion. Why red? I don't know. Maybe because it looks more elitist than white one, than the regular onion, but I don't think it matters. As you can imagine, because we're putting so much onion and so much garlic, this is not the kind of soup you eat before the date. So it's something you eat in the confine of your house and maybe stay in the house. And maybe brush your teeth afterwards. All right, here it is. Now, the next step is adding olive oil, vinegar, and salt, and the spice. And that's where it gets a little bit complicated, because I'm not using any measures. I'm just creatively pouring this thing, and I'm actually mixing balsamic vinegar with apple vinegar, because I think balsamic vinegar might be just too strong and too sweet. So quite liberally, quite a lot. I don't know, maybe half a glass for sure. I mean, at least in the end, I'm probably putting at least maybe 1/3 of glass of vinegar and maybe close to half a glass of olive oil. So a little bit of balsamic vinegar, a little bit of apple vinegar, and to smooth it all down, quite, what is it? Yeah, it's extra virgin olive oil. Yeah, quite a bit of olive oil. Yeah, practically without measuring. Just use your common sense. Okay, and then obviously, this thing. So with this thing, with this Italian Calabrese sauce, yeah, again, depends on how spicy you want it to be, but I think this is just around the right quantity, plus I'm out of it anyway. The bottle is empty, so problem solved. And we're putting this thing on in as well. And then, where's my spoon? And then a lot of salt. Salt should be, again, quite liberally, without measuring. I'll taste it when it's being prepared, and if more salt needed, I'll add even more salt. Okay. Salt. This soup has such a strong taste that you will not feel anyway if it's salty enough or too much. All right, so now the final question is, how do we mix it and pulverize it? How do we now turn it into a pulp, so to say? So to pulverize it, I use this pretty simple brown mixer. I mean, it looks simple, but it's actually a pretty expensive thing. I don't know how much it costed, and it's probably the most powerful of their range. I mean, it's pretty powerful, the thing. And obviously, that's where all the skill of making the soup comes. You need to pulverize it without splattering the entire kitchen and yourself with the vegetable juice. The way I'm doing it is something like this. Just to start it a little bit. Okay? It's hard to start. It's hard to begin, but then once it starts rotating and circulating, everything is fine. So basically the whole thing will start kind of mixing on its own. So after a while you see this is what's happening. And you need to mix it quite well. You need to mix it quite well until it kind of, until it doesn't mix anymore. Until it kind of mixes. So after approximately 10 minutes of mixing, it looks basically like a quite thin vegetable puree, okay? Now the next step is the one where I'm going to give you most intimate secrets of making the soup, because filtering, unless you use the proper technique, can be really cumbersome. And proper technique is this. I'm using two-stage filtering, okay? First I'm starting with a kind of big mesh, okay? And I'm pouring the soup. Obviously, I'm inserting it on top of another pan and pouring the soup into this strainer. And unless you use my secret technique, you will wait forever for this thing to filter. My secret technique is this. I'm taking this, what is it called? Kitchen spoon? I don't know what it's called, but I'm taking this thing and I'm starting to move this in a circular fashion. And by moving this in a circular fashion, it doesn't make any difference if it's clockwise or counterclockwise, it magically starts filtering, and in the end all you have is really, this is like tomato skins and pepper seeds. That's it. All right? And then we obviously, I mean, maybe somebody can eat it, but I'm trying this out, okay? So that is like first stage of filtering, and then I'm doing a little bit more. A little bit more of the same, okay? And again, you will wait forever for this thing to filter unless you use this technique. This is something that I developed after trying this for hours and actually wasting a lot of time. But you don't have to, because now we can take advantage of my secret technique. That's it. Okay, so this is like the first stage of filtering, okay? For the second stage of filtering, we take, I know it looks a bit ugly, but it tastes actually totally amazing. It will. For the second stage of filtering, we put finer mesh on top of this thing and filter it through finer mesh, okay? And with this finer mesh, we pretty much do the same. We put this thing and we move it in circular fashion, basically pushing the soup through the mesh to make sure it filters. If we didn't do this, it would take forever to filter. Maybe never. That's where the magic happens. That's how you get proper, real gazpacho. I'm quite sure when even native Spanish people didn't use such advanced techniques and probably were wasting a lot of time making their gazpacho, but I perfected it to the point where it probably takes just 1 hour to make 5 liters of gazpacho. So we do this, we do this, we do this, and in the end what we get actually is just whatever totally dry stuff. Everything else is the soup. Isn't that amazing? So maybe this thing, I'm quite sure it's edible too, but I don't eat it, okay? So we'll just throw it out all the same. So what we have now is the soup that's been twice filtered, and we take a jar and pour it into the jar. Oh, it smells beautiful. Okay, we pour it in a jar, put the lid and put it in the fridge. Fridge, not freezer. Beautiful.